Today I'm going to talk about the topic of food miles. Now, you may have heard about food miles. You may not have any idea of what food miles are. So what are food miles? Food miles are basically the distance that food travels from wherever it's grown, or if it's in the way of things like processed food where it's actually manufactured, and then how far it actually has to travel to get onto your plate where you can eat it. So different types of food comes from different areas, and it really depends where you live, but it also depends on what kind of food that you're actually wanting to eat. And so, we've got the world here, and let me see if I can find us. So we're about here, Vancouver Island, on the west coast of Canada, and a lot of our vegetables actually comes from down in, let's see, there we go, down in California, down in Mexico, and in some cases we've even got food coming from Europe, and we've got food coming from Asia as well. Some stuff from Japan, some stuff from China, maybe Southeast Asia, I think even Australia, and actually New Zealand is one. We actually get a lot of things like apples, pears, and that from New Zealand, especially in wintertime here when our stocks of stored apples and pears and stuff actually, basically ends up being used up. So we get a lot of stuff typically from New Zealand. So in all those cases, especially when you're talking about overseas, this is the method of transport. Thanks to my daughter for letting me borrow her toy airplane here, inflatable airplane. So, an airplane is usually the quickest way to get produce into the stores. And so, these things do emit quite a bit of emissions. They're noisy. It costs a lot too. So once, the airplane has brought it fairly close to where you live, then, you've got semi-trucks and other delivery trucks taking over and essentially just delivering stuff then to your local grocery store. So all of that transportation generates quite a bit of issues. And so, and then you've got also processed versus fresh food, which is a whole different story. But in terms of food miles, you're looking at a trade-off between cost and quality and quantity. So in terms of cost, it's actually sometimes astounding to me that when you buy something that is been transported from 1,000 miles away or more, that actually is cheaper than the stuff that's grown like literally just a few miles away from the grocery store. So, and that has something to do with just how much effort is required to grow something. You're looking at things like you can grow anything year-round in a greenhouse, but it costs a lot of money to heat the greenhouse and to provide enough light for the plants, especially in wintertime. So all of that contributes to the cost of local food. And then in terms of quantity, if you happen to live in a place, we're right now living on Vancouver Island. It's a fairly decent sized island, but still most of our food is coming from the mainland, and it has to be put on a ferry, on a truck, on a ferry, and comes over. So essentially, even if you do have local food, you may not have the quantity, right? You may be able to, for instance, have a local supplier of wheat, but that's not going to be enough wheat, for instance, to make enough products and things for a larger city. So you have to bring stuff in from outside. So as I mentioned, the issues really are, like I said, the environmental pollution of having to transport things such long distances. Food is also not really that fresh. You have to keep in mind that some of your food is probably on an airplane, on a truck for at least a week, if not more. It loses a lot of nutrients versus being fresh. It needs to usually be picked early. Things such as tomatoes, for instance, they're usually picked before they're actually ripe on the vine. Strawberries, I believe, are the same. And, some, quite a bit of veggies and fruit, they're just not the same when you pick them unripe and then kind of let them ripen. The other thing is, and it's become a big problem lately, where you have contamination of the food. It's being handled many times. It's obviously, usually it's packed in boxes and that, but as you know, some of the veggies and fruit are packed in boxes that have holes so that they can breathe. And so the probability of contamination is much higher than if it's just something that is being picked and brought directly to your grocery store in a short period of time. And then also stuff will spoil, and sometimes it's not obvious that it has spoiled until you actually cut it open, and you might not notice it right away. These issues are there. There's something to keep in mind. They're not all solvable by everything that you buy and everything that you eat. It's very, very difficult to be completely self-sufficient and have all local food. But anyways, so in terms of where this all leaves us with these issues is the best bet is to try to source food as close as possible to where you live. And you might have heard of the 100-mile diet. That's a common diet where everything you eat basically is sourced within 100 miles of where you live. For us Canadians, that's about 160 kilometers. So for us, a 100-kilometer diet is actually even better than the 100-mile diet. Basically, that means you're buying local. So either the food is actually produced in your city or town, ideally. So it's like less than a few miles, or it's actually close by, either in a rural area that's close by your city or town, or it's maybe in the same state or province. And you're supporting local farmers that way too. And they're more likely to kind of stay afloat if you can support them. Cost is usually higher. So, and in our case, the choice of organic versus non-organic local. So basically organic, not local, and non-organic local food is a tough one. I know that, we've sometimes had this dilemma in the grocery store where I want to eat organic, but if the peppers are coming from Spain, like the bell peppers we like to have come from Spain, I might not want to buy them from Spain. There is a list out there that's called the Dirty Dozen list, and I know peppers are one of the vegetables on that list, and there's a bunch of others. They're the veggies that are most prone to chemical pesticide use. And so, you have that toss up of, do you buy local, non-organic, or do you buy organic, non-local? Or if you're lucky, you can buy organic, local. But again, it depends where you live, depends the time of year. And so if you want to buy organic, local, often what you need to do is you need to actually eat seasonally. So you're not going to be eating strawberries in wintertime. You're not going to be eating things like even tomatoes probably in wintertime, unless they're grown in a greenhouse. So, and then that jacks up the cost, and you're ending up, spending a few dollars per tomato, which is pretty pricey. If you've ever had to make that choice, and you probably have, I would love to hear about it. You can pop that in the discussion as well, in terms of where have you had to make that choice of local non-organic versus organic not local. It really depends again on the type of vegetable, the type of fruit. If it's on that Dirty Dozen list, you're sometimes better off buying organic, non-local. If you're worried about your health, and if you have food sensitivities, and you have young kids and things like that. Now, what we also have is the 0-mile diet. And the 0-mile diet is essentially what I talk about, which is homegrown food. So literally, going out to your backyard, picking something, washing it, eating it. So, even if you can just grow like one head of lettuce in a container or one tomato plant, that's going to have an impact. Now, if 100,000 families were to do that, that's even a bigger impact. And that's kind of where I'm going towards is encouraging more and more families to grow their own homegrown food, and of course to help them learn how to do that. So, and like me, quite a few people now are looking at expanding what they're growing. So as I gain more experience and confidence myself, and I get more frustrated at the lack of choice that we have in the grocery store, I, am starting to look at growing more, and I don't need to depend on the grocery store. I don't need to worry about that decision that I have to make about organic, local, and all the different permutations of that. Case in point, I finally kind of thought, well, I wanted to do this for a while, and my wife had just bought some fresh organic ginger. So what I've done is I've basically stuck part of a ginger root, into a pot with a soilless mix of vermiculite and coconut coir. The idea being here that it's going to sprout. I can probably plant it in the garden. I think ginger is not that frost or freeze tolerant, so I might just maybe stick it in a pot. That might be better, and then I can put that pot in the greenhouse, kind of like what I do with a lot of other things that I grow that aren't necessarily cold hardy. The ginger is one example. Some of the other things that I'm considering doing is, and keeping in mind the ginger that we get here usually is coming from Mexico. Maybe some might be coming from Southern California, but I think it's mainly Mexico, and some parts of South America, and then from Southeast Asia. And there have been reports too that stuff coming from Southeast Asia isn't always that clean. They have different food regulations on growing stuff and preparing it for shipment. So there's a little bit of concern when you are buying stuff from, let's say, China or from other parts of Asia, Southeast Asia especially, where you have to be careful, right? So even if it says organic, there's always this chance that it might not be that organic. There seems to be varying levels of organic, unfortunately. So, and we use a lot of ginger in our diet. My wife is Japanese, and ginger is good also for her digestive condition that she has. So, we're using quite a bit of ginger. So if I can grow my own, I save money. I know where it's coming from. I know it's organically grown. It's clean, and it gives me a sense of accomplishment too, because I'm growing something that is not that common to grow around here, and it's something that definitely ginger, from what I understand, spreads quite easily, so it's going to do quite well, I think. So the other thing I'm doing is planning on getting a lemon tree and a mandarin tree. We like using lemons. We like eating mandarins. They'll very likely live in the greenhouse over winter. And then probably in springtime, when the weather warms up, I can put them outside, so they get enough sunlight and all that. I want to start mushrooms. We do have a good supply of local organic mushrooms here in British Columbia, but there's some mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms, which are really super expensive in the grocery stores. And it'd be kind of cool to grow my own and be able to have one more thing that, again, it's very local, it's 0 mile, and I have something that I can propagate and keep going. And then the other thing that I want to do more of is succession planting. So trying to keep my garden going all year through. So when one crop is done, replacing it with another crop and just keep going. And I'll have more information on that later. I'm kind of trying to study that and see. There's a lot of things to keep in mind. So I'm going to try to find some way to actually make it simpler for you so that I can explain it, and we'll have some way of hopefully making it less of a science and something easy for everyone to sort of copy and do. So anyways, getting back to the original idea of food miles, homegrown food, 0 mile. Um, Now, of course, people have excuses. They'll say, well, our winters are too cold. I can't grow anything in winter. Now, mind you, if you have Nikki's book here, The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener, that I've got there on the shelf, she does grow stuff in a cold climate with snow and freezing temperatures, and she's able to grow some stuff that she can go and harvest, anytime in winter. And we're lucky here on the West Coast. It's mild. We don't have much freezing temperatures. So I'm able to grow stuff in wintertime outside. But even if you can't grow in wintertime, if you can grow something in summertime, like I said, tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, just, whatever you can grow, that helps. It's just, the idea of many people doing it a little bit at, as much as they can or as little as they can, it helps. Like it just builds on that. It's the same, like, people are saying, less waste and throw less stuff away. It's impossible almost to go zero waste, but you can at least reduce, the waste that you generate in your household and what you end up throwing away. So with homegrown food, it's the same idea. Start slowly, do what you can. It tends to snowball. Once you start being successful and you can go out and you can pick some lettuce and a tomato, make a nice salad for lunch, or throw the lettuce on a wrap or a sandwich for your kids to take to school. Once you've kind of gotten to that point, then a lot of the other stuff is similar. There's some vegetables and fruit that are harder to grow, so I wouldn't recommend those for the beginner. But for the most part, if you sort of get your feet wet and try, and over time, you can basically keep working on being more self-sufficient and reducing the amount of food that you do have to buy. We're at the point now where in summertime we buy very rarely any produce, vegetables or fruit. We're able to eat most of our produce from the garden. So, but I want to go more into wintertime and be able to actually grow more in wintertime. Or the other thing that you can also consider doing, especially if you live in a climate where you have really good summers, is to grow more in summertime and then to preserve it. So freezing, canning, making like tomato sauces that you can freeze or can. There's lots of different things you can do. Like for kale, you can make like things like kale chips and that, and store them for a while. So there's lots of different options that you have for storing food as well, and so you can enjoy. Like we have a pantry literally full of jam that we've had for a good year or more actually. And then we've got frozen fruit that I use in my smoothies. We put on our cereal for breakfast as well. So when you get to the point where you can produce more in summertime, but then actually have the time and the energy to preserve it, then you're again reducing the amount of food that you're having to buy in wintertime that has a lot of food miles on it. So every little bit helps. So essentially, I really want to help make the 20s, so the 2020s, the decade of homegrown food. I would love to see more people growing homegrown food, obviously helping them do so, and kind of turn the tide around a little bit and reduce those food miles as much as we can, so that again, we're all those issues that I mentioned earlier about food miles, some of those issues can be reduced, and we get healthier, fresher food that hasn't traveled all these miles and lost quality and so forth. Let me know if you have any questions about food miles, or how you can get started thinking about next year already. Where can you go in terms of starting slowly and, getting at least some of the food that you eat to, that zero food miles. So that we're not relying so much on these guys and not relying so much on, the trucks and, all of that traveling around the globe that your food makes. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know how it goes with my ginger here. Let's see, camera, there you are. So there it is. It hasn't grown any since I last showed it to you. And I'll also let you know if I, start any other experiments with stuff that I haven't tried yet. Garlic you can grow in a container too. So, and that's another item that organic garlic sometimes does come from far away too, depending on where you live. I know that, you can get garlic coming from China here on the west coast of BC. If we buy garlic, we usually try to get it from down south, but it's possible to grow it here. It's just, no one is really doing it at a large enough scale. Like I said, let's try to make the 2020s the decade of homegrown food, and I'm here to help you on that path. And we'll try to do that together and see how far we can go. And maybe in 10 years I'll be doing a video that where I can say that food miles are no longer really that big of an issue. We'll see. It's we can be hopeful at least that things will turn around a little bit and things will be better. So thank you for watching, and like I keep saying, if there is a topic that you would like me to cover, please let me know. Always looking for ideas to get you going on your homegrown food journey. Thanks for watching. Bye.